Futari Precure is my favourite anime, and I've always wanted to talk about it. I've even tried mulling a few times in the past and I've never been satisfied with the result, always feeling like I've never done it justice. Now that I've got a somewhat competent YouTube channel and the format sorted out, I thought I'd give it another shot, but this time I'll have a friend helping me.
For the uninitiated, Futari Precure is the first series of the long-running Precure franchise. It is a magical girl anime, where each 50-ish episode series is a standalone story for the most part, airing one of these series a year, and it's still going on today. However, due to the production of the anime, the first 3 series are extremely different from the rest in terms of its tone, which isn't uncommon for these kinds of long-running franchises.
One of the things I like so much about Futari Precure is the tone. It tries and succeeds at hitting a tone that's a lot more realistic than most magical girl anime, since a very common thing with the genre is how over the top it tends to be in terms of presentation, whether that's in a light-hearted way or a subversive, grim, dark way. Whilst it isn't as realistic as a lot of anime out there, it does take a more subtle and clever approach at tackling both the characters and the magical girl elements. As I've already talked about in a couple of my previous videos, I'm a real sucker for when a show takes more generic superhero tropes and expands upon them in a clever and interesting way. One example of this would be the drawn-out transformation sequence seen in most magical girl anime. People commonly ask why the characters are never attacked during this transformation, but in Futari the beginning of the transformation expels a ray of light that blinds the enemies and stops them from doing anything whilst the transformation takes place. I really like how they tackle this side of things. In most magical girl series, the action ends up being underwhelming. The characters will transform, run around for a bit, maybe dodge a few hits, and then defeat the enemy in one big over-the-top hit. And I get that most magical girl series are aimed at girls who don't typically tend to care about intricate fight scenes, but why even have the action scenes if you're not going to do them well? Sure, the action scenes in Futari might not be Sakuga fests unlike newer series, but it trades that in for snappy, satisfying fist fights. Yeah, the characters just punch each other. They don't use weapons, and they only use magic attacks to finish off an already weak opponent. They're very well directed action scenes too. They have the same director as Dragon Ball Z and it really shows. Another thing I'm not usually a fan of is how in more recent Precure series the characters usually have outfits that make it look more difficult to fight in. In Futari, however, the costumes are a bit more subtle and look like it will be possible to fight in them. In general, they do seem to take the simple but effective route. I like the transformation devices. In order to transform, all you need to do is swipe the correct card while standing next to another person who's doing the same thing. This directly feeds into the core theme of the anime, which we'll get back to in a bit. Alongside that though, the transformation devices are actually 2 fairies named Mipple and Meffel who help give out some exposition and comic relief. But this also means the transformation device ends up working kind of like a Tamagotchi, where you have to look after them and make sure they're fed.
Speaking of the design, I really like the character designs. For me, they do a really good job of not being obnoxiously over the top, whilst keeping each character memorable and recognizable. For example, Honoka rocked the whole big eyebrow thing years before Mugi from K-On! Made it popular. The big eyebrows really lend well to giving her lots of good facial expressions, which is something Futari on a whole excels at. Another thing that fits is the clothing. The clothing for the 2 main characters really fits them and shows a lot about them as people. Nagisa has trendy colorful clothes that don't age well at all, whereas Honoka always goes for more plain, timeless clothes that still hold up today. Along with this, I also like the school uniform. It looks like the standard Japanese school uniform, but I like the use of color, as well as the waistcoat, along with the way the characters wear this uniform, changing it depending on which season of the year it is.
And the character development is where this series really shines. Most shows along these lines are focused on building up a big team of heroes, whereas Futari only has 2. The main themes of the anime really focus on the dynamic between these 2 main characters and how they develop and interact as time progresses. This anime is centered around the yin-yang, the idea of needing both darkness and light, both black and white. Because of this, it gets away with having a main villain that doesn't have much depth since it fits this theme much better, although other villains that operate under him are closer to grey than he is, especially one of them in particular. Nagisa is introduced as a tomboy slacker who manages to accrue a fair amount of fame from fellow classmates due to her being a solid athlete, but she yearns for a different lot in life. She's always wanted to be the nerd that aces classes and has boys pining for her instead. Enter Honoka, who is that nerd. Nagisa sees Honoka as too good. Someone who's way above her level, despite her friends thinking the 2 of them are about as talented as each other. It's not until the 2 of them become Precure that they get the chance to, or more accurately, are forced to, interact with each other. It's not difficult to imagine all the different character-based opportunity this relatively simple premise offers.
Because sure, this is a superhero show on the surface, but every good piece of fiction about superheroes should be about more than just good guys punching bad guys, no matter how well executed this action tends to be. And for Futari wa, the hero part of the show really just serves as a scaffolding for the story, with the character interactions being the actual bricks. Excuse the weird metaphor. I'm not going to pretend that every character has novels worth of depth or anything, but I did definitely get surprised a few times at how these characters interact and how they're presented. We've already mentioned that the smart character of the two is the one who has all the boys falling for her, but there's a lot of small examples of nuance to these characters that stop them from feeling two-dimensional. Nagisa is the one who always wears pink, even though she's a tomboy. Honoka is the one who is more associated with blue, despite being the more feminine of the two. It is also interesting to note that Nagisa has a crush on a boy, and Honoka seems to show very little interest in a romantic relationship. Another point worth mentioning is the fact that science is a field that is heavily dominated by men, especially in the early 2000s. When the two of them become Precure, Nagisa is the one who finds it as an annoying responsibility, whereas Honoka, the smarter, sterner one, nerds out and loves the idea of becoming one. The relationship between the two is portrayed in a weirdly realistic way. At first, they're forcing the friendship to work so they can work together as Precure effectively, but it comes off as a little awkward despite still having some genuine moments. It was established earlier that Nagisa is really envious of Honoka and sees her as a higher-up, and this power imbalance escalates until we hit a really important episode for the two. They get into an argument and fall out. Nagisa has had a pretty open crush on an upperclassman who goes by the name of Shogo Fujimura, aka Fujipi. Honoka was actually childhood friends with him, so she tries to introduce him to her since she assumed that that's what Nagisa would want. But Nagisa wasn't ready for it, and all the previous tensions end up exploding. One funny thing to note is that in a lesser show, the enemy would attack, and Nagisa and Honoka would have to learn to put their differences aside so they could stand a chance against its opponent. But instead, they end up beating him really easily because they're mad at each other. And the way they end up making back up with each other again is a callback to a previous episode that I wasn't expecting to see return. It's at this point they realize they shouldn't force their friendship, and so start from the beginning again so they can build up more slowly this time. There's a lot of big episodes like this that either progress a character's relationship or show an interesting interaction. You're going to have to take my word for it because I don't want to give away too much, so we can keep this video relatively spoiler-free.
This carries over to the way they handle the more minor side characters too. A lot of the time there will be episodes that spend some screen time focusing on a character that isn't particularly important to the plot, with most of them being classmates. Whilst this doesn't contribute to plot, it fleshes out the world a bit as well as focusing on the series' main strength again. I do like that there are only 2 magical girls, meaning that they get a lot more screen time each, but you can't realistically fill such a long show exclusively with just 2 characters. A lot of the time they will keep the show on track, focusing on the magical girl point of view, meaning we never get to see the full character arc of the side characters they interact with. We only really get to see what Honoka and Nagisa see, which is an interesting approach. An early example of this is episode 4, where the class go on a school trip to an art gallery. This episode focuses on Mayu, a classmate who really likes a certain artist. There's no real character arc though. All we get to see is Mayu explain to Honoka and Nagisa why she likes the artist so much, and then we see her see his paintings for the first time in person. There's no real change of heart or character progression, which could definitely be seen as a cop-out, but it's saved by the way it's presented, and the fact this is one of the only instances where this does contribute to the wider plot, since it ties into how Honoka became a member of Precure in the first place. Futari wa keeps the world small, meaning that a lot of the time we'll see side characters from earlier appear again, or we'll even get to see characters before they get their own episode. Most of this does just amount to them being in the background or getting a couple of lines, but it makes it a lot more believable when we see a previously important classmate just chilling out in the background, which I'm certain a lot of anime have both done before and after this, but the tone and characterization made me care about it in a way that most other shows haven't been able to. Let's get back to the presentation for a bit and talk about the sound. The soundtrack is one of my favourites. It captures the tone of both the character-focused and action-packed parts of the show very well and ends up getting stuck in my head extremely often, which it's been doing for all 6 years since I originally watched it. On top of this, I'm going to have to say once again this English dub is one of my favourites. It's not quite as good as the Carbide Vanguard dub, but it employs a tactic of hiring even more obscure voice actors, with this actually being the breakout role of my favourite anime voice actors.
It's actually pretty simple. If you don't want to hang out, you just have to tell him.
I'm going to be even more controversial and say that I don't even like the Japanese voice acting, since it does that thing where it gives most of the female characters, as well as Meppel, really high-pitched and annoying voices that get old really fast. I'll say it again, Futari wa Precure is my favourite anime. And that's something that's so difficult to talk about, because a favourite is something personal to the people they belong to, which means there's no real way of knowing whether anyone else actually understands the points I'm trying to get across, since I'm so obviously am being biased and basing my opinion on external experiences and what makes me the person I am. It's an anime that resonates with me and doesn't seem to resonate with many people at all, not even fans of the newer installments of the franchise. I've always wanted to do Futari wa justice, and the first video on this channel is actually a video review of this very anime that was previously made private. So this has just been me talking about Precure for a few minutes. I would gush a lot more about this anime and say and explain in depth what it is that I really do like about this anime. I got interested in doing these video essay style videos because I really wanted to be able to communicate how much I love this show. I even put off doing this very video until I was good enough to ensure I don't mess it up this time. But I finally realised it's not that easy. There isn't some special combination of words I haven't discovered yet that'll make everyone realise why I have such good taste for liking an anime aimed at little girls.